And we're live, folks, back again. This is your host of Lit Literature, JP, aka The Demon, and you're here with the shout-outs, finally, to discuss Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. As you can see, we've got some books out in front. Shout out. Oh my God, at Starsight. Oh my God. I didn't mean to do that. We're so pumped because we just released all of our Skyward episodes. As a matter of fact, the final one is going to be released this weekend as we're recording our Starsight episode. So we're super pumped about it. You've got a crew here, part of the shout-outs. So we'll go ahead and start with our flight roll.
There we go. All right, reporting in from parts unknown. Actually, a call sign captain. Actually, this time, gents, I'm in a lovely public park. I'm with a Dione. He didn't tell me what his name is because he's just a draft of a Dione. But he's showing me this beautiful public park. There's lots of kids grabbing what appear to be giant water droplets. It's a very serene place. I feel very at ease and one with the universe right now.
Nice.
Ben. I just listened to
Fight roll. Wow, it was so
Ben,
beautifully.
call sign. Got hypnotized by Andrew.
I am Brett, call sign the director.
Beautiful, and you guys know me, call sign the Demon. That was an amazing poetic description that clearly hypnotized the hitman. I almost feel like
Ben got lost in your eyes.
I almost feel like he has a heart somewhere in there, but I don't know. So awesome. So we are super pumped about these episodes. We've waited. I think we should start. Let's just do kind of a round table on spoiler-free. In essence, spoiler-free. For those of you catching this and not realizing what you're getting into, we do expect you to read before you listen to this and then join the discussion afterwards. But we'll go ahead and do a spoiler-free review, and then you could just get out of it if you need to. Let's just go ahead and start with the director, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, as I mentioned in the beginning of the first one, I very much love sci-fi. I also very much love Sanderson. The two together for Skyward were absolute just magic for me, and this book continued it. I loved everything about this book. Like I said, I think a lot of books, stories in general, movies are stories, but I feel like some books feel like they almost are movies on paper, and other books feel like, oh, this would have to be really, really adapted. I feel like that these two books both feel very cinematic to me. I can you don't even have to have a great imagination. Like literally the shots are right there on the page for you. So I loved it, I think, extra just because it felt like I was watching a movie with my ears.
Nice.
Yeah, the second book in the series, it starts out really strong. Most series, you end in a big climax, and in the beginning of the second book, it's kind of slow and it builds back up.
Yeah.
But this book just started off just as strong, and it propelled you even forward. There was no slow point, I thought. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. And we actually talked about that when we were talking about one of our series that we were working on recently, about how sometimes it feels like it climaxes and then it's like, okay, let's get back into the story. But this was just nah, let's just keep going.
Straight line.
Yeah, I agree.
Straight shot. How about you, Captain?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's got a bit of a different pace and a bit of a different feel from the first book. I think most readers who enjoyed the first book would still be on board with this one. But whereas the first book was more of like a Top Gun, really action-packed scenario, this one was more espionage aligned. So it had a little bit of a different feel, different pacing, but I still loved it. Some awesome universe building in this one. The sci-fi world that Sanderson expands upon in the second book gets even bigger, obviously. And you get to see a lot more of the alien races. Really, really cool, well-developed alien cultures in this second book. So definitely a strong follow-up from the first one.
Nice. All right, my opinion. Let's see. I did enjoy the book thoroughly. I have to tell you, hands down, this is not even remotely close to the book that I was expecting.
Right.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Like when the book started, I was kind of like, okay, we're getting into this, and then it just went left field, and I was kind of like, This is not what I expected at all.
Yeah.
Not even remotely. But I did still enjoy that. And actually, in a way, that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it kind of like caught me off guard a little bit, off my toes. We left a lot of the characters that we were hoping to get more on.
Yeah,
to go
this is like
meet
that
new
one season of
characters.
Game of Thrones where we just like didn't see half the cast.
I
for the
know,
whole
right?
Season.
It's
Right.
totally crazy, but it was awesome because it's set up and like the captain mentioned, just the world building. It truly had a totally different focus.
Yeah, it really took the story in a different direction than I was
Yeah.
expecting, and added a lot of really cool elements to the story.
Man. So that's what we think, folks. So as always, feel free to talk about how you think in any of the comments on any of the medium whatsoever. So okay, my first
Really
question.
quick, going off of like what
yeah.
I thought one thing that was kind of interesting, because this is kind of like meta, so before we get into the details, I figure I'll just throw this in there really quick because I don't know where it'll fit in. But I thought it was really interesting how like Andrew mentioned, like we get to meet like a lot of the other like races
Yeah.
and species that exist in the world and stuff like that. And I thought it was kind of cool because in a lot of sci-fi, not all sci-fi, but in a lot of sci-fi, there are stories of like humans being chased by some, race. Like what is it, Battlestar Galactica or something like that?
Sure.
Is basically about that. And there's other sci-fi like that. So I thought it was cool where like this kind of started off that way in book 1, where it's just like, oh, we're being chased down by these like, faceless like boogie monsters.
Right.
But then it was just like in those series, I can't think of one that you ever actually get to just be like, oh, but obviously there are like societies that exist out there beyond just this like chasing through space endlessly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I thought it was really cool to just suddenly take a pause, and now all of a sudden we're at their home base,
Yeah.
we're in their world, and it's just like, oh, like they don't even really know what's going on, you know what I
No.
mean? Like, I don't know. And there are a lot of parallels that you could draw to like real life, where it's like there's conflict going on even all over our planet.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's like you don't really know it on an intimate level, you know what I mean? Like you just go
Yeah.
about your everyday life because you can't worry about everything that's going on
No,
in the
I mean,
universe
think-
all at
think
once.
about it.
Here we are
Yeah.
drinking, talking about a book, but
Yeah.
over in Middle East there's conflict. people
Exactly.
dying,
Right.
Right.
and we're so disconnected from it.
Yeah, it was a good way to kind of make that parallel.
Yeah.
I think Sanderson was he actually made a few philosophical parallels all over the place.
Yeah.
In
I love
this
how he
book.
touches on a lot of just interesting topics, not necessarily making a point, but just getting you to think on it in all of his books.
Yeah,
It's like one of my
exactly.
favorite things about his writing style.
And it's interesting because he does it in a simpler way. Like in Stormlight or something like that, it could be more
It's more complex.
hidden,
Yeah.
a little more complex.
Yeah.
It's a little more. It's not quite as obvious in this style.
Yeah.
It's a little more obvious, but yet he does it in a way where it doesn't feel like you're being like force fed one way or the
right.
other.
Not being
It's just
preached
kind of
to.
like think
Right.
about this, think about that,
Yeah.
think about this. It makes it a little non Terry Goodkind esque. Not that those books,
Yes.
we don't
we
need to go
certainly-
down that rabbit hole, but
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
not that I dislike
there's
those
certainly
books at all. But.
a lot of that in the characters as well. Spensa's horizons are greatly broadened in this book, and you get to see some of her previous character attributes where that's the kind of decision Spensa's going to make. But now that she has access to a whole larger part of the universe and she realizes what's going on a little bit more, she takes a step back and actually acts a little bit less impulsively like she would have in the first.
Yeah, at times.
Yeah,
definitely
at times.
a graduation from Spensa version 1 to Spensa version 2.
Yeah.
But in terms of
Right.
Spensa version 2 being to probably like Spensa Endgame Commander-in-Chief,
Yeah.
she's not there yet,
I mean,
but
she learned
obviously
a lot of skills,
she
but
learned a
she's
lot.
Very
Yeah.
inexperienced still, and that inexperience leads to bad decisions.
Yep, and I think that's part of the joy of it, and I think it's really cool because you get to see her acknowledge her own weaknesses in that, realizing, oh my God, I was like that before, and then also realizing, holy cow, I cannot judge people at all. I can't judge people at all, which we can talk about
Right.
as we get to those particular points.
Yeah.
Sweet, that's a great opening. So, we do get to go out into space, and we do get to meet all of these nice sci-fi-esque aliens, and we will talk about all of that, of course. But let's bring it back down to Detritus briefly in the little brief time that we have there in the beginning of the book, and let's talk a little bit about Cobb, the replacement for Ironsides as the new head of the DDF.
I was so surprised when I read that. I did not see that coming at all, that Ironsides was going to be replaced by Cobb.
They said she retired, and you know what that meant.
Yeah.
That was kind of a, like,
They forced her out.
forced
Forcible
retirement.
step down.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that was pretty surprising. I didn't see that coming either. And actually, they didn't make a big deal out of it either. Or at least I thought they didn't make a big deal out of it,
didn't seem
because
like it.
2/3 of the way through the book, I'm like, wait a minute, like Cobb is making all the decisions. Where's Ironsides? And then I went back and I'm like, oh my God, Ironside got demoted,
Yeah.
or she, forcibly retired.
Yeah.
So yeah, there wasn't a big deal about it. Cobb was just suddenly in control. And as readers, everyone's going to be on board with that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If-
I mean, the interesting thing is like at the end of the first book, you almost kind of feel like one of the conflicts of this book is going to be, well, now how does Ironsides, deal with the fact that they know more about all this stuff going on? What they thought isn't necessarily it. Like I think I remember in episode 3 us talking a little bit about like she's probably not going to be able to accept it or something
Right.
like that, and that she may still have it out for spin or something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And
But now she's just a civilian.
yeah, but basically it was just like Starception. It's like take that exact conflict, and then he teleported it to a different
Right.
government on a different planet. And then by the end of the book, he then took that and took it away from here and put it in an unknown entity that we still don't really understand.
Right.
And it's just like, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I again, this book kind of, like I said, it's not the story I was expecting at all. Not that it's a bad thing, but I was kind of like, okay, Cobb's in command. I could see that forceful retirement. I know Sunshine would be just giggling in his giddy socks, his
overjoyed.
giddy Christmas
But
socks.
honestly, I'm kind of surprised because the government is set up where she's in power, and
Yeah.
that if they obviously has some checks and balances to make her retire, which I was kind of surprised about.
If there was enough people, I think after what Spensa did at the end of the last book, and the mistakes that were made that became open because of what Spensa brought back, that information that she brought back, it's almost like, even though she was in direct command, they still have that council of like elders, not elders, but like first citizens or whatever they're called. And it just, they probably said like, back off. And to be honest, she was probably like, I'm done with this.
Yeah, I was
might
going to
be.
say there's also a possibility. I forget exactly the feeling I had about Ironsides at the end of the first book. All the like little details
I
of
thought
like
there was
her
a little
character changes.
redemption.
But
Yeah,
I
there was
was
a little
thinking
redemption.
that there's also potential that she just like stepped down. Like, wow, I really had this wrong, and I could have, if not disobeyed, this could have turned out much worse, you know. So
they did talk, like when that conversation in the first book, Skyward, where Cobb and her are talking in the office, and she's like super stressed out and is like, "Would you ever want this job?"
yeah.
And that was a little foreshadowing there. Cool. Just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on that. What about the new Detritus rules? So we didn't get a ton, but there were some hints about how there's this new organization in the government down in Detritus now in the DDF. Spensa is obviously allowed to do a lot more than she used to be able to do. She's a lieutenant now, and kind of a gung-ho lieutenant in the beginning of the book, at least, riding solo, trying to duel, push it to the edge.
Yeah, that disappointed me. That was a slide back into version 1 Spensa.
Version 1 Spensa, yeah.
Like, she
Version
went out
1
there with
spin.
a plan that she
Yeah.
like, this is the plan, and she kind of forced that plan on them to be the decoy and lead them back into the ambush. And then she's like, you know what? I'm just gonna fly out here by myself for a while,
Yeah.
Right.
try to hyper jump. And then she couldn't. Then she got back into a corner and had to be saved.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. I was disappointed in that as well, Hitman. It was a shame to see, like, right away from the second book, Spensa didn't learn a lot of those teamwork-oriented lessons that she that were instilled in the first book. But I understand why Sanderson did it, because you need to have your main character start from a point where they'll have to go through a transition, they'll have to learn something, they'll have to change.
yeah.
Like, I guess Sanderson could have put Spensa right away from where she left off, but it's always easier to knock them down a peg and then give them room to grow as characters, from the perspective of a brand new book.
Because
So I understand why
I
he
understood
did it.
that, and I felt like she got a big head, and her ego was
Right.
inflated because she was so important that she could do what she wanted, and it let her take her away.
Well, I think there's also I don't know if this is the reason why he did it. I'm sure he did it for pure storytelling reasons, but I think also from like a practical point of view, like in Taekwondo, for example, we'll have students that will like not have their hands up. And when you're, doing certain types of sparring, you kind of want to have your hands up because it's halfway between offense and defense and you can defend yourself and attack. But yet, I'll sit there and I'll tell them, you want to have your hands up because if you don't, you'll get smacked in the head. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, that really makes sense. And very next second, they have their hands down. Why? Is it because they didn't want to listen? No, it's because it's habit. So I think, like, she can come to realizations, but that doesn't change how you're going to act viscerally right away. It takes time to rebuild that new habit. And sometimes you do things that you don't necessarily agree with simply because it's your instant reaction. And she may have just kind of followed her instincts and kind of been a little weak in that moment. Not, possibly.
Right.
I do agree with you a little bit. She was definitely following her instincts. If I go back to the end of last book too, I think that she learned a lot of hard lessons. I'm not sure that teamwork was quite there yet. Like, she was definitely learning about that she's not a coward and she could sacrifice herself and for the bigger picture, and that she can work as a whole for the same goal. But there wasn't a lot of time in the last book where she was actually like not solo flying or solo, even at the end with Mbot, she was doing a lot of solo fighting and things like that. And so I think all the training that they did to be a team was there, but it hadn't been innately, it didn't, until she started to have to be the person to train somebody else, it didn't actually settle in, and she didn't internalize those lessons.
And not only that, I don't think she fully appreciated how important it is until she didn't have it later as well.
That's
because I think sometimes even, I mean, it doesn't mean that she doesn't value her teammates, but I think sometimes you don't really truly, like, deep down viscerally understand the importance of something till it's gone. You may understand it on a conceptual level, but you don't really feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's
that's a great point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because if you think about it, she even she's going off and doing all these solo trips, but her team is still so well trained. They're adapting to what she's doing to keep this mission alive. They can do that on the fly. Then she goes off, which we'll get to when we actually talk about the point where she goes into space. But when she goes there, nobody could do any of that.
Right.
So she goes off alone, and everyone's just going off alone. They're all killing each other and throwing stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, I think, something that she hadn't quite internalized, and she probably did not know what she was missing until she didn't have it.
I do want to say that they, in the 6 months that have passed since the first book, they incorporated her idea of having a specialized sniper with Cork and her being the decoy.
Yep.
And they were running that for 6 months. And I see your points. I think that's true. But I also think that they let her get away with it, and it gave her a big head, an inflated ego.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, even Cobb, even Jorgen said that to her, right?
Yeah.
He's like, just because Cobb will, not really do anything, you're pushing it to the limit.
Yeah.
Because she knows that Cobb, it goes easy, not easy on her, but he kind of
It's
does.
a soft spot
in a way.
for her.
Yeah.
He I mean, in my opinion, I think Cobb views her like a daughter in a way.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, that's a complicated relationship.
For sure.
Because before, that was his wingmate's daughter.
Yeah.
And then he
Killed
him.
Yeah.
And then she found out and forgave him.
Yeah.
More or less.
They're close, is my interpretation. So,
But was there any conflict in the beginning? No, I'm just kidding.
no, was there drama?
Was there drama? Was there any drama?
Like, I suppose we can take 20 minutes and talk about the drama.
I will say though that from what you were saying, like definitely I agree with you that they probably let her get away with a little bit, too much because she was so important and stuff like that. But I don't think it pushed me to the point where I was disappointed. I think as an instructor, Jeff, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I've seen kids so many times do things like that it's hard to be disappointed. You just realize, oh, this is part of growth. You know, making this mistake is part of growth. Sometimes if you're given a position when you're too young of a, importance, you're going to get a big head.
Yeah.
And it's like you need something to put that back in check, or you need good guidance in order to put that back in check. Yeah. But I agree with you that, luckily Cobb was kind of there because I think he's slowly...
he could put her in check.
Yeah, he puts her in check when he needs to.
Same as Jorgen. And I think Jorgen did put her in check when he got back. Because he reaffirmed, like, hey, what are you doing? Because, you know that if you die, we're all screwed, right? Like, you're not just important because you could fly. You're actually important, probably so important that we shouldn't even have you in the air.
Even have you, yeah.
So, like, you should be down on the ground in a safe box. And she kind of realized that they're letting her be her.
Mm-hmm. Also, I loved how he deflated her right away. Because he's like, oh, I know how to deal with bullies. And then he's like, you can't be a bully, Spin. And he's like, oh, what? I'm the bully. What?
Yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah. And he had a point. People like that in your life for sure. He was definitely in the right there.
Yeah.
And he, Jorgen, he got a promotion as well because he's the captain now, right?
Correct. Yeah. I believe he is a captain.
He was just a flight leader before. So, yeah. So, yeah, some cool stuff. Do we want to talk? Do we want to do final remarks on Detritus since they're kind of excluded from the rest of the story for the most part? Yeah.
I think so, probably.
Pretty much the only other thing I had about the original team from Detritus, I'm glad we got to see Quirk. She went on a little flight mission with Spensa there in the beginning.
Her at least once.
So that was cool. Saints above that happened. Thank goodness. And
the and what?
As the Saint always said, I'm glad I make at least one appearance in a book. But they do hint at the fact that Jorgen and Spensa had a little attempt at having a relationship. Was I wrong in that?
They almost kind of, they still definitely have the tension.
Yeah.
The relationship tension going. I think they might have tried to. They kind of alluded at it, or they alluded that they started to think about it, and they decided not to for now.
I didn't get
that impression.
I didn't get the impression that they did. I just got the impression that like the tension was there, and that she just kind of like was like, well, I might die, so let's go for this right before she jumped off.
Maybe that's what we're talking about. I can't remember the exact words.
Oh yeah, well,
I remember that kind of being brought up, but I don't think there was ever an attempt at a relationship.
Okay.
Just Spensa kind of like recognized that she had feelings to herself, not to him. And then she's like, he's my flight leader. I don't want to do this right now.
Right.
Gotcha.
And put it on the back burner.
But then when she was faced with the fact that, like, oh, this is really stupid what I'm about to do and I probably won't come back, it's like, F it.
Yeah.
They got a kiss in, right?
Yeah, they kissed right before she left.
Yeah. We got a kiss in. And nobody else got a kiss in, so we have one Brett bet that we cannot answer yet, unless it's in another book.
Right.
Which had to do with
Ned and Freya.
Yeah, I think it had to do with Ned and Freya, who Freya didn't even show up in the book. I think she was only mentioned.
No.
Yeah.
Right, she was mentioned. That was it.
Yeah. All right, one more thing in Detritus, because it happened in Detritus after this whole... because Cobb and team had located a video footage, like ancient video. When I say ancient, I mean as ancient as their ship crashed, which is like, 100 years, I think?
It's a little bit older
years,
than that.
It was older than that, I think. It was the very last thing that was recorded before the previous
that means
civilization
it was really old.
went away. Yeah,
that means it was really old. But what we see, this scene was really interesting to me. I wanted to go back and read it, and I didn't have the opportunity. So I'm curious to see how you guys felt about this scene. But essentially, it shows the humans on this planet, which this planet was clearly designed for defense against Delvers. Maybe, although they keep saying to control Delvers, humans control Delvers, but as Victor's write history, I'm still a little I'm still a little hesitant about the superiority's version of human war history. Personally, I feel that way. I don't think they're so wrong. Maybe we were, but I don't think the story is the way that it's coming off now in the future, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that when we talk about the superiority in general. But we see this video. The Delver had come back, and everyone's freaking out, and they're defending against the Delver. The Delving Delver. They were defending against the Delving Delver.
Yo, dude, what you doing? Oh, I'm just delving.
Anyway, and it like fails. So they end up doing something, I think, at the last minute, even though they know they were going to die, the people in the video. And then the big black hole comes, and then Spensa sees herself come out of it. Now, we learn more about Delvers later, which I'm going to kind of save most of that for that particular conversation. But at this point in time, how did you interpret that? What were you thinking exactly? Like, I could tell you what I was thinking. I started to wonder if there was going to be some time.
That's what I thought. That's exactly where my mind went as well. I thought it was going to be some type of time travel. I thought it was going to end up being that, maybe potentially we find out that the humans did something really bad and she's trying to come back and like fix it somehow. I didn't, but that's how I interpreted it.
The way they kept pushing humans were doing all this stuff bad. I was wondering maybe if it would go down that road. What about you, Captain?
Yeah, because we know kind of why she saw what she saw in that video. But I think when I originally read that scene, I was kind of, I don't know, I had really low expectations for the payoff. I'm like, it's probably just going to be some throwaway hand waving at like, oh, you're the chosen one kind of thing. And I'm glad that it's a lot more complicated than that.
Right.
It is a little bit of that in a way, but there's a lot more to it than just a cheap throwaway, like, oh, she's the chosen one kind of thing. So I'm at the end of the book, I'm glad that that Sanderson did it the way he did it.
Yeah.
But my initial impressions were kind of I had very low expectations for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Sanderson didn't set me up for any of that. But I think just because you've seen some stuff like that before in less well-written stories.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's probably just going to be some cheap throwaway thing. But it really was.
So
I was
maybe even though it's towards the end of the book, we could talk about that one aspect of it right now, because like the what we find out is, and again, for listeners, this is a spoiler warning because we are talking about the very end of the book in essence, at least at this fraction of a story point here. So it turns out you get there, and when you're looking at the core of a Delver, it just, at least in our eyes, all it can do is reflect back at us. Mm-hmm. So and it seems like only people with cytonic abilities can even do this, because she was standing there seeing the video, and later when she's in the core of the Delver, it's only able to reflect back at her. Mm-hmm. And same thing as they explain that the feelings that she has seems to be it reflecting back as well.
Right.
So my main thought is, though, she's cytonic, she sees it in a video, and still she sees it only reflect back, even in 100 years ago video footage.
Right.
Herself? Really?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's not some kind of a little, like, a hook, that maybe that's something different than even we know. Maybe it is.
We know even right now. Yeah. I get the feeling, I mean, there's really no reason that I think this except for just a gut feeling, but I get the feeling that we're going to get thrown back that moment again in book 3 or 4 or something
somehow,
like that. I think it's going to have more significance than we think. I don't think it's going to be like you said, Andrew, I don't think it's going to be some she is Neo, she is the chosen one. I don't think that's what it's going to be. Right. But I do think that it's going to come back in some way. I think we're going to get more information about that, because I still think it's a little hazy beyond just, they reflect things back at you.
Yeah.
And she's a cytonic, and the reason nobody else saw themselves is because they were not cytonic like she is.
Well,
also think about this. Isn't Jorgen kind of a cytonic?
Some people did see the eyes.
Yeah,
that's right. Jorgen saw the eyes.
She's more powerful, more developed than they, so she saw everything.
Yeah.
Well, they only saw a picture, like a small glimpse of it. That's what I got from it.
Yeah.
How crazy would it be is the first thing that you see of a Delver is the eyes, and then if you are really paying attention, you find out it's your own eyes.
Yeah.
You only see your own eyes looking at you all the time.
Yeah.
Now,
my eyes really that color?
Just to piggyback off of that point, Hitman, the reason that, you mentioned Jorgen was a little bit of a developing cytonic. Maybe this was really obvious and I just kind of missed it, but was Graham training him and getting him more familiar with his cytonic abilities.
Yeah.
And she was talking about the story with Stanislav, Yevgra,
And
The Russian.
Petrov.
Yeah.
The Russian
Right, yeah.
submarine guy.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Yeah.
I was really
Yeah,
surprised
and
to see it in there.
It's true.
Yes.
Yeah, that whole story was completely true. I was really interested in that, and I went and looked it up on Wikipedia. I'm like, oh my god, this really happened back in 1983. Why is this guy not like the leader of the known planet?
I wish he could have taken over Russia, but whatever.
Yeah.
But it's crazy
Right.
to think how close we came to nuclear war
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, man,
Russia
very-
would have retaliated if he said, hey, they shot missiles at us,
Yeah.
and we couldn't shoot them down.
I mean, I love that. I guess we're kind of talking a bit ahead, but I love that. I love that story so much because I really do think that the kind of like moral, the theme of that story is so important for people to realize, and I feel like a lot of people don't truly realize it. I feel like everybody likes certainty.
Yeah.
They like this idea of, like, we put systems in place because there's a lot of people that don't think of things really deeply and they aren't really, really skilled in what they do.
Yeah.
So we have to put systems in place because it allows, like, the people that aren't as good to be elevated, but it also keeps back the people that are better.
Yeah.
So it kind of like brings everybody and smashes them towards the middle.
Yeah.
So it keeps really, truly special people from reaching their potential. So, like, the system of, oh, you follow orders, you bump this up to your superior.
Yep.
It's like if you follow that every single time, yes, if that guy didn't know what he was talking about, if he didn't have these instincts, if he didn't read these little tiny things that made him realize, oh, there's something off about this, like if it was somebody that didn't have that insight and didn't have those good instincts, it could have potentially destroyed their whole country. But because he did have this insight and he knew when to break the rules, it was just so important. It's like, I think a lot of people think that systems are absolute. Like, oh, this is the rule, so therefore we follow it. It's like, if you don't know why you're breaking it, then yeah, maybe you should follow the rule.
Yeah.
But if you have a very clear reason why you're breaking it, well, then maybe you need to take a chance sometimes.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And what a good person to hear it is Jorgen, who's developing in his own right. And I think he acknowledges to himself that he kind of broke protocol.
He basically did it already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
Right. Yeah. He just needed to be more comfortable with that decision.
Right.
And he already trusted Spensa. I think he even said so himself that he
Yes.
had complete trust in her. But, he just needed to trust himself
Yeah.
too. So trust his own decision.
I mean, the other crazy thing is, though, is that in an alternative universe where the plan didn't work out, Jorgen could still potentially be just as right. Maybe that was their only chance.
Could
you know
be.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So, like,
Right, on
even
the
if
flip
it
side of
didn't
that
turn
same
out,
coin.
he still could have potentially made the right choice, and
Yeah.
yet he would think otherwise. So I think that's another, like, kind of hard to
Yeah.
accept truth about certain situations, is that even if it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean your decision was wrong.
Right. You know, interestingly, to your original point, Captain, too, is she was training him that way as well. And I think that I think it's going to be interesting because now that we have Jorgen showing,
Yeah.
I suspect more people are going to show up in Detritus that have this ability. And what I'm curious about, though, is there's a very, very, very clear weakness that they have that was not exploited too much in this book, which is that without Mbot, they don't have the shielding capable of protecting the Cytonic's minds. That was very, very easy for them to flip Chaser and have him come down and...
Speaking of that,
right.
I was thinking about this in the book, that it wasn't the Krell who put those images in his head. He went into hyperspace, and he saw the eyes, and they broke him. Because you know how Spensa gets that feeling, well, oh, I gotta destroy humanity, the insects, and that happened
nowhere.
to Chaser, but he just went too deep, and he didn't come back
Do
out.
you think
I
that?
was
I don't
thinking
think they
that
said
too
that.
for a second, but I thought, I could be remembering it wrong, but I thought at the end of book 1 there was an actual moment where Spensa was like kind of almost like reading their
they
minds.
did. They tried to
and
take
she
her
heard
over.
the thought process of them saying like, oh, give her the images
Give her
or
these
something like
images,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they said that, but I don't think from what we've seen in the second book,
Yeah.
the technology is not that advanced.
Their hologram technology isn't, I guess. Oh, that's a good point. Maybe they were just talking about holograms. But
Like, something to, like, calm her, like, some kind of shield or sleeper. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
But
it would make sense.
I'm thinking that he
I'm
went
open-
into the
I'm-
void.
Yeah, I'm open to the fact that it could not be what we were told. However, I don't know yet. I just
I think it's an interesting idea.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a great idea. I'm not 100% in that camp yet, but I definitely am now like absorbed. I think in that way a little bit. Like
Yeah.
let me think. What if it was that way?
I think that's a really cool idea, though, because I didn't think about that when I was reading it, but I like it now that I'm thinking about it.
Although I thought he said like he was shooting down his own pilots, so either broke or he was seeing them as Krell, because he came down and he thought that the story in the first book was that Chaser thought that his entire camp was killed by his entire team was killed by Krells, and he was just getting vengeance on them.
Right.
That's the
Right.
impression we got, but
Yeah. I'm still in the camp of it's the like they have this mind technology, but I like your idea a lot, Ben, and I'm open to that being the reality.
It could be either. It could
Same
also
here.
be somehow, well, maybe not, but it could also be somehow related. Maybe they know more about the Delvers and how they go into Cytonic's minds or something like that.
Either
I wonder if that
way.
technology is somehow based off of the training facility. Maybe they learned something in the training
but
facility.
it sounds
I
like
don't
we're
know.
kind of split. I think we should make it a bet.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Word
I
it.
like it.
Word
Make
it.
a
What's
bet.
the wording, baby?
So
All
it's
right.
either he was mind controlled by the Krell or
Okay.
he got
Broken by the Delvers.
yeah.
That's a good one.
And I'm gonna say
Or
the Delvers.
Delvers.
Okay.
Ben Delvers.
I'm gonna go Krell. Technology.
Krell. Captain?
Ooh, man, I could really go either way.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not clear cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I like both of them, but I'm probably gonna lean a little bit more toward Krell.
I am as well. I'm going to stick with Krell.
Okay.
But I think this will be one I'd be happy to drink
Yeah.
on if we lose.
I'm happy to
Because I
drink on
like
any
the
of them.
idea a lot. I like
like
the
it's
idea
good
a lot.
reference.
I think it's cool. And I also, to be honest, I hope that it actually ends up to be that, because I think that would be a much more epic ending for Lift's dad.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah, it would be.
Here's the thing, though. If it is that, then we don't have to worry as much about our developing cytonics on Earth. But right now, we don't have the technology of MBOT anymore that we used to have to protect our cytonics, which means any cytonic that we have is just going to be a disaster when they're
Here's actually,
fighting the Krell.
I think that Ben's idea poses a much bigger threat to our cytonics, because I'm kind of thinking that in the next book we're going to somehow be at some point teaming up against the Delvers, and that their technology might not, like in one of the future books, might not be a threat to us at all. But if it actually came from the Delvers, now every single new cytonic is also a potential negative to us. So it's like our weapons are also a negative. It's like we have to weigh the pros and cons. So I think that's kind of a really cool idea.
I think look, I'm actually excited for it's probably good if we save it till we get to the end, because I think we're going to talk a lot about what we think about the next book, and we'll make a lot of probably speculations. But I think you might have a good point there.
Yeah,
for sure. Excellent. So I think we're ready to leave Detritus, but not yet. There's one more thing. But it's only because it's what catalyzed us. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Catalyst is a word, but
Catalog?
catalyzed.
Yeah.
Oh, propelled us?
Yeah,
Like
this is what propelled us
it was
to
the
outer
catalyst.
space.
It catalyzed us to Delver.
It catalyzed us to go out to space. But anyway, the point is that during that whole video sequence, what's her name?
Spin.
No, the alien, the elf-like blue / purple alien.
Alanik.
Alanik hears it, calls to Spin, and then comes to Earth. And something that's pretty cool about that is, first of all, I was kind of like, holy shit, there's another one. I was like totally caught off guard. And it did not at all go the way that I thought it was going to go. But we do meet our first alien at this point.
Yeah. And I think it's really... Well, this is getting too far ahead of ourselves. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
I was just going to say, I also think that it's really interesting that we still don't even know why she was there.
No.
Like,
Well,
why did she decide to... I don't think we know
break
why
off.
she decided to derail from... Beeline it from her actual
know for
mission, which was to go to Starsight.
Yeah, we don't know for sure, but it's implied, I thought, that she heard Spin
Right.
at that time, and she's been looking for humans to ally with against the superiority.
I agree.
That's likely.
Yeah, I agree that might be the case because that's the only... Because when they were going through that whole thing where Spin was like, I'm just going to secretly tell them that I'm not Alanik and all this stuff, I was just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
The only reason that they didn't give her up is that I think that they probably were secretly looking to ally against the superiority.
'Cause it
Probably.
seems-
But I
Also-
love that she didn't wake up before the end of this book, and that
We don't
that's just
know.
like-
Yeah, she's still in the coma.
Yeah, we don't know
Sanderson's just
anything.
like,
When,
he just ends it with a picture of a big middle finger.
We don't know anything. Yeah, we don't know anything about her real culture.
Also, it's rumored that they have a secret base of humans on the planet.
Yes.
Well, we found that out
At the
already
end.
as well.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, so they obviously know humans aren't. If it's true, they aren't warmongers and mindless killers.
Right.
There's
Right,
also some
yeah.
point where there's thought that there might be other human planets, right?
Yes.
Where
Yes.
they're being kept captive or whatever.
right, other colonies.
Yeah.
It was kind of neat when I started reading this book and Sanderson started introducing those new alien races. I went online to try and find if people had done artwork, even though the book has only been out for
Right.
a few weeks at this point. I went on to see if there was any artwork available for any of the characters, and there was by a lot of independent artists who did artwork for the characters from the first book, all the humans, and then of course there was a lot of Doomslug artwork, but I couldn't find any like Dion's, any Krell or anything. I couldn't find any alien races. So for the
Hopefully soon.
for Alanik's race, I was kind of picturing the Asari from Mass Effect.
Yeah.
With like tusks coming out of their face or something, or like some
Wait, which
I
one?
don't know,
for
Zerg protrusions, something like that.
for Alanik?
Yeah, for her race, because they said she had horns or like
thought she had, like,
almost like
ridges
demon
or
horns.
I thought they
right?
were ridges. Yeah, I thought they were
Ridges?
like bone ridges on the cheekbones.
Yeah, I thought they were like bone protrusions or like or tusks or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just what I pictured in my head.
I got the picture of kind of like an elf, almost like a dark elf, almost. If I was to go back to the World of Warcraft look, but then with like these kind of bone ridges over the cheekbones, tinted skin color of purple or blue.
Yeah.
Something like that is kind of what I was picturing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were picturing Spensa like that for basically this entire book, since that's the alias that she pretty
I know.
shockingly successfully kept up for like 90% of the story.
I know. I keep mentioning the movie that I'm going to direct, but when I have to cast this, I'm gonna feel bad because 90% of the people I cast in the first movie are not gonna be back for the second very long.
But they'll probably be in the third.
Right.
So you just make a deal, and then
exactly.
you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have a cameo that wasn't in the book.
Yeah.
You'll have a cameo, it'll keep you in, and then you're in the third. And it won't matter if you film all, like, pull a Peter Jackson and film all three
all of
or
them, yeah.
4 or 5 in a row. Yeah, but anyway, so that was the first alien that we met, and since Captain dove into the aliens, Jorgen gives the okay for Spensa to go ahead and infiltrate with M-Bot's amazing, by the way, phenomenal holographic technology.
Yeah.
Like beyond this, like imaginative. It's like so good that you could do that is absurd.
Yep. From every
Freaking
angle.
amazing.
Right. Interplanetary cloud projected hologram.
Yep. But that outfit works good, and she's got the translator. She heads up to space, and we get to see Starsight. and the city, as well as a lot of kind of, in my opinion, highly unique aliens. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you guys thought, but I was kind of like, I think Sanderson did a good job at avoiding kind of like normal
tropes.
Normal like kind of sci-fi alien tropes. I don't know how you guys felt, but
What are you directly a big sci-fi guy?
I really felt for the incredibly small races being around all these giants. I could relate to that for some reason.
The Kitsen.
Yeah.
the Kitsen,
And then also the ones that like are like in the exoskeletons because they're just like, man, I'm
Krell.
sick of being short.
the Krell.
Yeah.
They're like little.
Oh yeah, it
crabs.
was the Krell.
They're
Yeah.
little crustaceans that wear giant robotic exoskeletons.
Exoskeletons, like
My.
from Men in Black.
Yeah.
Remember the little dude? But yeah, I liked it. I felt like I mean, a lot of people really disliked the movie, but what was that one movie by the guy that did Fifth Element that was considered really bad recently?
yeah.
Was that Battlefield Earth?
No.
I forget the name of it, but it did
It's
not
the
do
comic.
well.
It
It
was
had
based
that
on
one
French comic.
yeah. I forget the name of it, but I felt like some of the creatures like fit in that world.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a great.
I don't know why,
That's an
but I
awesome
felt like it
comparison.
would fit
Let me
in
see what that is.
that world.
Is that the one with the two little kids? Oh,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
two teenagers.
With that one unbelievably attractive girl. I forget her name. She's like a model.
Oh,
I know which movie.
this
you're
was
talking
like within the last
Yeah,
year
it's a
or
new
two,
one.
right?
It's a new one.
It was probably like 4 years. I
beautiful,
think.
beautiful,
Oh.
beautiful. Like visually.
I can't believe I'm
unbelievable.
forgetting the
something.
name.
I
of
know,
it.
Is it
why am I
1,000 something?
A
Thousand
thousand.
system?
Whoa,
Oh
my
well,
god.
I'll look it up. Go ahead and keep
Yeah,
talking.
I'm sorry for those of you who are listening to us. This is actually really pathetic on our part. You could tell that it's been a long week.
Yeah.
I think we're some of us because we're like we can't even remember this movie title that we as nerds should absolutely know.
I know.
Right.
But
yeah. It is Friday.
yeah,
Just going off of the alien cultures, man. I think Sanderson knocked it out of the park with the Dion's.
Yeah.
I loved the whole like idea. I mean, there's a lot of controversy behind it, but basically it's an alien race where two parents can form a draft, which is basically like a baby. And the baby can get a few months into development, and if they don't like the baby's personality, they're like, we're just going to redraft you.
Yeah.
And you get to keep some vague, cloudy, hazy memories of your previous life, but you'll have a completely different personality. You'll have a different IQ. Everything like that is going to be completely different.
I have to say.
And-
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Captain.
I was just going to say, like, some people might view that as, like, murder, like you're killing, that person. And the unique traits that they have.
right.
Yeah.
But I think that's really interesting. Like they were talking about how it's mainly the extended family members who will upvote or downvote the drafts.
Yep.
So it's like basically your family determines if they want you to live at like 4 months of age.
It has to be the family, right? Because until it's born, the parents are actually you. Like they're combined
Right.
into you at that point.
Right.
I have to say, like, I don't judge the people of this race at all. Like, I think that it's really easy just to say, like, oh, that's immoral or something like that. But it's like, this is
Right.
what they know. And this is
Right.
actually
Their reality, their
it's kind of like,
culture,
I mean, that's how they
But
procreate.
I personally
Right.
think that not only is it I think it's a really bad idea, personally. I think that it's an absolutely terrible idea. But there's kind of like a trade-off that you come up with the two things. Like when you have people that are allowed to kind of just like basically, in short, what I'm going to say is you're going to create a society that doesn't change when you do that.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the same. And sometimes that's fine. And maybe they feel like they've reached a point where they don't need any more evolution or progress or anything like that. I don't know.
Maybe.
But you're definitely going to stagnate as a society if you do that. And I don't know. I don't like it.
I think we even get the hint that maybe they were wrong about that because they were going to downgrade
Warmer.
Yeah.
Warmer.
Yeah. And as it turns out, she had more like kind of deep innate hidden potential than anybody thought because you weren't looking at it from a different perspective.
Right.
And that's exactly what I think the director is trying to say.
Yeah.
The stagnation of that society. But it's such a cool idea to bring up and then have that be a conflicting culture.
Yeah.
Because like with even not just humans, which Spensa's not technically a human right now, but she thankfully is a alien breed that's close enough to us that there seems like we had a lot of cultural like interchanges. So it seemed like her reaction was normal, but other species were kind of thought it was a little like different as well.
It is.
Also, did you guys find it weird, like when Sanderson would write about one of them, it would be like, Spensa would be like, even with Kuna, who's also one of that type.
Yeah. A Dione.
Yeah, they'd be like, I grabbed them.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
And like we moved them
grabbed their hand.
and us. And it was like, it's so weird because even the language that he was using to like write was about two people, not one.
Yeah, I looked over at the cockpit and saw Mortimer, and they looked back at me.
They looked back at me. Yeah, it's so interesting. But what a little, like, nice trick to give you that, like, alien feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just, like, a little thing like that. A little nice stylistic trick to make you feel a little more alien.
Right.
I agree with the captain, though. I thought that was kind of a clever idea.
It was really interesting. I can't think of anything similar to that I've ever seen.
Yeah, same here. That was pretty original. It seemed really original to me.
Yeah. They say that there's like no new ideas. I think we just found one.
Felt pretty good.
That's the last one.
Yeah, that's the last one. Yeah. Now we're all done.
Just get inspired by other ideas. So how about the Kitsen? I enjoyed Heschel.
Oh, he was my favorite.
Yeah, Hesho. Yeah, Captain Hesho.
Captain Hesho, who is basically like a little miniature samurai gerbil.
Yeah. When I was taking notes, I could never remember his name, so I just said gerbil fox people.
Gerbil fox. Did you really say gerbil? Okay,
gerbil fox dudes.
Gerbil fox guy. Dude, the funny thing is I was reading that pretty fast, and the first time that I met them, I was falling asleep. And I was reading before bed in my audiobook, and I fell asleep. And in the morning, I started to read again on my way to work, and I was like, they were explaining the Kitsen, and then I was kind of like, wait, is this guy a Kitsen? And I had imagined, because I was dozing, I imagined the first conversations like some random alien, and then they explained the Kitsen, and then they explained the like little fox people, and then I was suddenly realizing that he was like on a little tiny little fox gerbil, like on a little thing, and I had to go back and reread it and then reimagine like those scenes correctly with Hesho as like the little gerbil fox guy. But I thought it was hilarious. He would be sitting on like, instead of they'd be flying on the barge, and he would be sitting. Spin would be sitting, but then he would have like a whole like chair on top of a whole building and bars and like all kinds of like TVs and music, just because they provided it to him because they were so small.
Yeah.
Well, because he was the king, but he's not the king.
He's not the king.
He was one of the primary politicians of that planet.
Dude, for a long...
I kept, for all of our Overwatch listeners, people who are familiar with Overwatch, I was totally picturing Hammond, a.k.a. Wrecking Ball, the whole time for Hesho.
I have to say, at first, I thought the whole we're a democracy now was, like, bullshit. Like, I thought, because it seemed like they kept accentuating it. They kept being like, oh, but that wouldn't be allowed by the superiority rules, so we're a democracy. I thought it was like, wink, wink. But then it's like, they are now.
They were, well, I thought it was hilarious because...
They still, like, respect him and probably give his, like, opinion a lot of weight, but...
Well, I thought it was hilarious. Go ahead, Captain.
Go ahead, Demon.
Oh, okay. I'll go first. You go second, I guess. But I was going to say that I thought it was hilarious because... You kind of get a feel that it could be a wink-wink. Yeah. But then you realize that they legitimately are trying to be democracy. But then the people can't, in their culture is so ingrained, they can't go against the king. And the king's trying not to. Hesho's trying not to, like, he's just trying to tell them what to do. And then they're trying to interpret what he meant by saying yes or no. So I thought the entire thing was hilarious.
Yeah.
I was just going to say it's probably a lot like the George Washington situation. Because when our founding fathers created the United States, we had all these great intentions put into place, like, oh, our leaders are only going to serve 4-year terms. They're only going to have, they're going to have checks and balances with other state members. And right away, once we got independence, a lot of people were ready to give George Washington like sovereign power.
Yeah.
They're like, well, you can be our king, even though this is what we fought a war against.
Yeah.
And George Washington had the restraint to say, no, let's stick to the
Thank
plan.
you.
I appreciate that you really
you need people
like
to
worship
get used
me.
to it.
Yeah.
But no.
But that's a great, that's a fantastic comparison, Captain. Because it's like people who haven't had anything else, it's like they just automatically go back to that. And so thank goodness you have people like Hesho or George Washington who can legitimately just go and say, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Show me a leader that is actively trying to reduce his power, and I'll show you a leader worth having.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's pretty awesome. So we got the Kitsen. And I don't know, do you guys want to go all down deep on Hesho, or should we just like broadly talk a little bit about the crew, the new flight?
I do agree with you guys. I think it is kind of a democracy wink wink type thing, because the whole crew was always like democracy. Like every time somebody mentioned it,
exactly.
I wanted to shout along with them.
They're like, we're just trying to fit in. Oh man, and talk about the ingenious way that Sanderson used the continuous use of lesser species.
Yeah.
Lesser species.
Yeah.
Like every time I read it, I was like, ugh. Stop calling me that.
Yeah.
It's just like so well placed.
Yeah.
So we have Hesho.
The thing I think is interesting, though, just really quick as a little
No,
side note,
not quick. We could do whatever we want.
The thing that I think is interesting is just this like idea of like, saying the word lesser species definitely like it feels icky.
But
it's just like I don't like the feeling of it. But if they didn't use that, they're still thinking it. Mm-hmm. It changes nothing.
It doesn't. And I think that's the point that he was making.
Yeah.
And I think that word, not only did he not come up with a derogatory slang that they could use, he purposely just used the like straight up word.
Yeah.
Lesser species.
Yeah.
I think there was actually a little symbolicness to that. It was just simple because it had nothing to do with making up a word or this or that. It had to do with the tying a word to the actual up here, the thought. It didn't have to do with the word. He just used the normal language, descriptive language.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting.
I do have to say that in a society, with the society, how they prioritize things. Now, I don't agree with their prioritization.
Right.
But in a society that literally prioritizes like lack of conflict over everything else, to the point where they can't even like cultivate people for conflict. They had to go out and search for people that are conflict averse or conflict prone.
Or just like at least somewhat open to it.
But in a society where that's like so important, really humans are a lesser species for that specific metric. You know what I mean? Like it's
metric,
like we definitely are
aggressive,
conflict and prone and aggressive. You know what I mean?
We are aggressive compared to that.
Yeah.
Don't be so aggressive.
But that doesn't make you lesser because overall, everything has strengths and weaknesses. And that's where I think he was getting at, is that like they just take what they consider important and judge everybody by it, as opposed to looking at an overall like, well, what are the pros and cons of all this?
Right.
Because you guys are seeing the cons of what you find important right now. As soon as you have an enemy at your doorstep, you're useless. You know? So
But it's weird because I felt the King Crab, the leader for the crab people.
Wizzick.
making me hungry, Ben.
Wizzick, right? It's Wizzick.
Whimsic.
Yeah.
Like he would like instigate fights with people and then be like, "Oh, you're so aggressive." Oh,
right.
And like make them look bad. Like,
I know.
Because he
Even though he
realized
was
how
so
to use
aggressive,
aggression in a society that was useless with aggression and that would never defend itself.
Dude, good thing I wasn't in Spin's place. Cause I'd be like, "Oh, I'm aggressive. Fuck you!" I'd be like, "Damn it! Wait, no, I'm supposed to be chill. Damn."
You play right into his pocket.
Oh, really quick.
I was proud of Spin for that.
This is completely out of the current discussion, but the movie was Valerian that we were talking about.
Valerian,
before.
that's right.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So I think we should kind of. We're not in a rush, by the way, to close the episode out, but we should finish going through the new team.
Yeah.
Spin's new flight.
The new team.
And then we could take a little break and then go to part 2.
I want to talk about what's her name?
Well, we got to talk
Vapor.
about Vapor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got through the Kitsen,
I
we
love
got the
Vapor.
diodes, and then we have Vapor, who is what were they called?
A Figment.
Figment. Yeah.
Yes.
And by the way, they said that humans used to have some Figment technology, which is what MBot is made up of.
Seems to be, yeah.
And now she can actually go in and hijack technology. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't even have to fly. Or I guess she does fly, in a way, but she's kind of like a gas cloud, essentially.
She like
I
flies
wonder-
it by shortening the circuits and then controlling the circuits.
So I wonder if the reason MBot has such amazing hologram technology is because they used to actually personify themselves in their ships. So they would actually be able to interact with people because they'd actually have their MBots make like little version of themselves.
I was curious
Interesting.
what Figment technology would mean then. I was thinking that MBot, like that AI, is almost like essentially a copy of a Figment
Yeah.
in technology. Not Figment taking over technology, but actually harnessing it and copying it while it's in there. And so you actually harness the personality or something. But we could get into my theories later. Let's actually just talk about Figments. That's maybe a little teaser.
I thought Vapor was a pretty cool character.
I liked her a lot.
I like the alien aspect of her. Sanderson had this really great line where Spensa's thinking in her mind, and she's like, "Can a living creature be a smell?" Because like the only hint that you would get that Vapor is even around is you would get specific smell sensations.
Yeah.
And that was literally the only way you could tell she was even there.
Yeah.
Other than when she spoke. So, which is pretty alien. So I
Yeah.
thought that was another neat twist that he threw in there.
I thought it was super creative. I think after you find out that one of your teammates, captain, lead, and also spy for Kuna is, well, we find that out later, but potential spy for the superiority is invisible, and all you can get when she's around is a smell. I was like, man, you got to be like a million times more cautious.
I know.
when You're being
Right.
She kept
Oh
like
my
realizing.
God.
I thought it was funny because she'd like keep going into these things and she'd like talk about things that could get her into a bunch of trouble. And then after she would do it, she'd be like, "Oh, I hope Vapor's not around." It's like, dude, think about that beforehand, bro.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was
Sniff,
interesting.
sniff,
She was
sniff.
the only one
Yeah.
who couldn't tell where Vapor was.
Oh yeah.
Because everyone's like, don't sit there. Like,
Yeah.
Vapor's there. And it's like, how can they tell?
Yeah.
They must.
Yeah,
Well,
dude, that would.
I know how the Kitsen could tell because they're like animals, so they have a good sense of smell. Humans, some have better senses of smell than others, but Spin is always thinking like, "Oh, it smells like lemons. I'm gonna sit here."
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh shit.
oh, it smells like lemons.
That means she's angry.
I mean, the strange thing to me though was that it seems weird that she's even capable of sitting somewhere. Like what I had pictured in my mind for a long time was just not an actual like
Person body, yeah,
body,
like
you
gas.
know, like yeah. I just thought it was just
Yeah.
like an entity, you know. It was like, and not
Right.
even a gas because at some point doesn't she even say like, oh, but she can travel through the vacuum of space? She would get dissipated if she was a gas. It's
Yep.
like she's just like.
She's actually a
Pure
body.
consciousness.
Like it's almost. The
I
way,
thought,
So
yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
And I won't go into this too much because of the fact that we don't need to derail this story. But I'm reading right now a book on quantum physics, and a lot of it has to do with like your atoms and stuff. What I really think is that she's a grouping of particles,
Right.
essentially. It's gaseous to some extent, but not really because it's connected.
Yeah.
So there's like a maximum, minimum, like length and space that she can't just expand like air and go, over here. Or she can, but she's taking her whole body with
Yeah.
her. So she's kind of got like a little body that mimics gas, but it's like particles that have to be together. That's what I was kind of settling on in my imagination. Maybe Sanderson could confirm that, but that's kind of how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you guys think about that.
I don't know. I literally just pictured her as almost like having, because I forgot about the Spin sitting on her scene.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Did that not happen?
I just like I don't.
I think that was just a joke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That she didn't sit on it, but whoever she was with stopped her from sitting at the table.
Sitting at the table.
I was just
okay.
Yeah, because I pictured her as just having like almost, I don't know, just like being almost like nothing, like not even being. I don't know. It sounds so weird, but like I just like pictured her as like almost as if humans created like AI and uploaded themselves into AI, and now you're just like a voice or like particles that, or you're just like signals that can travel almost anywhere, almost as if you're like a Wi-Fi signal. You know what I mean?
It would be interesting if Spensa,
but with consciousness,
wrapped her hand through the figment vapor. She just went.
Yeah.
Like, would she feel any difference in texture?
Yeah.
Or would it just go through? I don't know.
Suddenly she just hears, "Oh no, I'm pregnant." Damn it! Why did I experiment? Jorgen's gonna be so mad.
And it would be in that exact same tone and urgency, director. Oh dear.
Oh no, I'm pregnant.
So we have a Figment, which we're gonna have to discuss more later as we get into the story. But good character. I think Vapor is. I don't know. She was a pretty good leader in a way. She knew where her weaknesses were.
Yeah.
She wanted to watch. Mm-hmm. She clearly had another mission. Mm-hmm. Even Spensa knew that after she found out what Figments tend to do. She just didn't know what the mission was.
In the beginning, because we first meet her hiding behind a asteroid or something like that.
Yeah.
During the training exercise,
seems so much more timid.
Yes.
Than
I thought she was like a super timid, like shy character, but it turns out that that's just like our human interpretation of it, and it seems like she's actually like not really timid at all.
She's watching.
She's just watching. Yeah. She's just like
her role as an observer.
Yeah.
So, like, that's going to be her primary objective is to stay alive and see what happens, report back for her.
Yeah.
So she's not going to be the type to go out guns blazing. Yeah. But yeah, and of course the voice actress gave her an extremely, like, timid, almost cutesy, docile voice. Yeah. But, I mean, halfway through the story, when you find out that she's a spy herself, then you're like, oh dear, this is getting a lot more complicated.
I loved that I'm glad that the voice actor portrayed her the way that she did, though, because I thought it made a really cool conflict in, like, how we perceive this entity, this being, and how she actually is, because like she's not really, like, she shows to not be timid. Yeah. All throughout the book.
No,
but you still perceive her as timid because of how soft-spoken she is, and you can't see her, so it's like, that automatically brings in imagery of like, oh, I'm hiding, I don't want to be seen, I don't want people looking at me, but that doesn't exist with this person. She just can't be seen. Yeah. You know what I mean? And she has this very timid voice, but yet she had no problem basically just strong-arming Spin into a position of dual leadership with her, of like being like, like this role. She's like, well, you have to. Yeah. It's just like, oh, damn. Yeah. You're not timid.
And we're not going to go crazy with it because we're going to have a lot to talk about. Yeah. But we have a human in the group beyond that. Good old Braid. What an ass. I can only imagine.
Do we want to get to her at the start of the next one?
I actually think that we should talk a little bit about her right now,
but let's save the next one.
Let's save the meat for when we start talking in the story about the impact that she has.
I'll say that I know that this was by design, but I basically thought the same thing that Lift did about Braid in the beginning and through most of the whole thing. I thought that she was this, kind of trapped. Yeah, in her situation creature. Yep. That didn't probably have like any confidence and was just constantly fighting to not be her. Yeah. And then, we kind of find that maybe that's not the case.
I actually absolutely loved that realization. Yeah. That sometimes you're not just a creature trapped from your circumstances.
Exactly.
And it was one of the just most awesome lines where Spin, she finally like gets it, and she's like, "Holy shit!
Yeah.
You're just."
But why did it have to be the human? I mean, that's so cliche. Why did the human have to?
So we do have a human. She's an awesome pilot. Actually, potentially better than Spin, we find out.
Yeah.
Definitely twisted. Now, the question that we're asking ourselves, and that you, as a reader, can also chime in on, is, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but is she tortured and brainwashed? Or does she really know what's up, and she's not really a victim of her circumstances?
I think she's a bit of both.
Or is she a bit of both?
too.
And it could be.
I think she's a bit of both.
But we do have a human, and it's kind of cool to see a human. She was taken from her family young, at like 8, I think, 7 or 8, they said, and raised by Whimsic as his pet, essentially. And he kind of, in a way, reminds me a little bit of Grimwoody.
A little bit, yeah.
If you're following some of our other books, you'll get that reference. But if not, no worries. But in a way, my thought is she's clearly good, but she plays the human card. Renegade, out, angry, and it reminds Spin, naturally, of her younger self a bit. But to me, in my opinion, she's way worse than Spin's even younger self. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I mean, I think to really get into it would be another
That's
30
true.
minutes.
You know, the biggest difference between Spin, Spensa, and Braid is that Braid is kind of forced into the renegade role. She doesn't really have a team, nor does she necessarily want one.
Yeah.
Spensa started off that way, but I think she grew to accepting her team as like a family, whereas Braid never had that opportunity. So
Well, she kind of had this opportunity now, but it's almost like she didn't want it. You're right. Maybe this discussion
at that
would
point
go
in her
deep
life,
for
I think she was past it.
Yeah.
And like
right,
Spin
yeah.
was never that far outcast. She had her mom, her grandma,
Right,
her friends.
Not
or
that
one
far.
friend.
Yeah.
Well, also think about the fact that Spin, even though she was like in that position when she was younger, like quickly had moments where like even like Jorgen, who she butted up
Yeah.
against, like had moments where it's like, oh, this guy isn't quite what I thought, you know, like, oh, maybe he doesn't hate me, he's just got his own way and stuff like that. Whereas Braid probably never had a moment like that. It was probably like, oh, these people are always looking at me as like the thing that's wrong around
Right.
here. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And does she even care? We will wonder that.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to take a break, folks. So we got through a lot of the baseline of Starsight, which was pretty damn awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yes.
we'll see you shortly. Our time, 5 minutes. Your time,
1 week.
for part 2 of Starsight, and we're looking forward to it. Just so you guys know, we did break from our sequence. If you were following us before, we broke from our sequence on the Lightbringer series in order to hit this Skyward and Starsight while it was hot. So while we're going to release these Starsight episodes over the next few weeks, that will be giving us time to continue our reading on the Lightbringer series, book 4.
And then we'll finish that up.
And we will finish that series up for you. So if you're following
Although the
both-
next episodes they'll be getting will be book 3, because we already recorded.
That's
that.
correct. We did already record book 3, but that's all to give us extra time to read.
Yeah.
And that's because this takes a little bit of time and effort, folks.
Yeah.
I'm glad we
have
did
to
it. Wait, I
read.
love this series.
Yeah, we had to do this series. And then, as the captain mentioned in episode 1 of Skyward, after that we will be doing Mistborn.
Yes. After Lightbringer. Yeah.
Andrew the captain actually started that particular
excited about
book for a little bit before doing this. So.
Yeah, I'm super
I'm
excited.
about 10
for this
chapters
one.
deep, but I'll reread it for our next
Yes. All
coverage here.
All right, folks. We'll see you for parts 2 and maybe 3. I don't want to promise to it yet, but it might be.
I'd be willing to bet.
We got a lot of deep discussion on this stuff.
Yeah.
So, with that said, this is Lit Literature.
Cheers.
Cheers. thanks again for joining us for this episode of Lit Literature. If you liked us, please check out our social media at Lit Literature 1 at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't hesitate to join in on the conversation. We appreciate the conversation, the questions, book recommendations, anything of that sort. Join in right on the social media websites. And don't forget to check us out at our website, litliterature.com, and our upcoming projects, though there aren't many now besides Lit Literature, you can find at lyket.net, Lyket. We do have a Patreon account, but if you truly want to support us, please like and share. Cheers.